Hello and welcome to Pock and Rob. This week's video I'm going to continue my unwitting series of anniversaries. I'm going to take a look at albums from 1973, pick my top 15, they're all going to be turning 50 this very year. The previous video in this series I kind of indicated that I struggled with 1972 and I picked 7. This has not been a struggle for 1973 as the top 3 alone comfortably sit in my top 15 albums of the 70s. And there are many other rewarding records from that year that actually didn't make it into this list. Before I dive into my list, I just remind you to like, hit the subscribe button and the bell to receive notifications of future content, and let's go. So let's start with number 15, and just sneaking in under the wire, Paul McCartney and Wings' Red Rose Speedway. Now, there are moments when this would fall out the list. There are tracks on here that I don't like. I mean, Loop in particular, I think is the absolute nadir of Wings recorded releases. But I am also taking into account the fact that my copy of Red Rose Speedway on vinyl is this. A far superior release, in my opinion, which is the double version. Were it the double version, it would comfortably be in this list. But as the single version, the more I listen to Red Rose Speedway, the more I'm minded how much I actually do enjoy and like a lot of the music on here. Number 15, McCartney and Wings, Red Rose Speedway. Number 14 is an album that the format I own it on is not exactly pictorially interesting. It is Tubular Bells. I own the copy through the boxed set that came out after Dawn. Tubular Bells really is an album of two halves. The first half of the album, part 1, is phenomenal. So many great tunes and ideas packed into one side. Side 2, much more forgettable, with the exception of the hornpipe at the end. And even then, it's the boxed version that really stands apart, with Vivian Stanshall wandering around a manor house and scraping bits of painting. But Tubular Bells, side 1 alone, gets it into this list at number 14. Number 13, Stevie Wonder's album Inner Visions. I rate this album slightly higher than Talking Book from the previous year, because this contains Living for the City and Mr. Know-It-All and Don't You Worry About a Thing and Jesus Children of America. Really, really fine album. Grammy award-winning album, of course, because it is Stevie Wonder. Inner Visions at number 13. At number 12... and this surprised me how much I've grown to like an album that when I was younger I really dismissed as rubbish. It's Lennon's Mind Games. Now, Mind Games is not his best record. Believe me, it's not his best record. But it does contain several really, really strong tracks. So the title track, Tight As, which I think is the best thing on here. Those then are followed by Aisumasan, I'm Sorry, One Day at a Time, which is a lovely song, and then Bring On the Lucy, Free the People. Side 1 of Mind Games is really good. Side 2 dips somewhat, but it surprises me how much I actually do like Mind Games whenever I put it on. I know I'm not going to actually love it, and I don't think I ever will, but Mind Games at number 12. And nudging ahead of his former bandmate into number 11, Living in the Material World by George Harrison. Not a patch, in my opinion, on All Things Must Pass, although reviews at the time did kind of say it was a worthy follow-up. I don't agree, but I do like things like Give Me Love, Give Me Peace on Earth, and I'm really, really fond of Sue Me, Sue You Blues. And away on side 2, Try Some, Buy Some. Great tracks on Living in the Material World. Unfortunately, I think it's just that little bit too George Harrison preachy for me to place it any higher. But number 11, Living in the Material World. At number 10, I have placed Roxy Music's second album of 1973, Stranded, and their first number 1 record. I really like Stranded. I like stuff like Mother of Pearl and Song for Europe and Street Life. It's the first album without Brian Eno, And I must admit, personally, I find some of Eno's weird soundscape textures that little bit grating. And so as a result, I rate this slightly higher than I would For Your Pleasure. Number 10, Stranded by Roxy Music. And number 9, the first entry on this list from an artist that released 2 albums this year. And it is from January 73, Elton John's Don't Shoot Me, I'm Only the Piano Player. We have Crocodile Rock and Daniel. Those 2 alone would be, they were massive hits and would warrant an investigation of this record. But then you also have Elderberry Wine, Blues for My Baby and Me, Midnight Creeper, Texan Love Song, which I think is cheeky, if not downright insulting, but really quite good fun to listen to. And then the 2 best tracks on the record, the closer, High Flying Bird, and the album side 2 opener, which is Have Mercy on the Criminal. If this is viewed as being a bit of a teeny bopper album, that's for me probably because of Teacher, I Need You, and I'm going to be a Teenage Idol. But Don't Shoot Me, I'm Only the Piano Player. It's a good time record. My number 9. At number 8, we get into a proper rock classic for Houses of the Holy. So this is Led Zeppelin's 5th record, and Led Zeppelin 4 had been massively successful. Huge hit of a band that was just going from strength to strength. Houses of the Holy is a worthy follow-up. Again, not quite the match of the 1971 record, but it's still a great record. No Quarter, the song remains the same, the beautiful Rain song. I even like the Crunge. I like Diamaka. And generally speaking, I have an issue with White Men Do Reggae, but Diamaka, great song. The Ocean. This is a really fine album. Houses of the Holy, my number 8. At number 7, I have placed Greetings from Asbury Park, New Jersey by Bruce Springsteen. This may even lay claim to being my favourite Bruce Springsteen album. It's probably the closest thing in terms of what he did to being a Bob Dylan clone. But we have Blinded by the Light and Hard to Be a Saint in the City and Spirit in the Night. This is a great record. I really like this debut album. It was on my list of top 15 debut albums. Greetings from Asbury Park, New Jersey by Bruce Springsteen. At number 6, I'm proving what a bumper year 1973 was for the 4 artists formerly known as the Beatles, beating out Lennon and Harrison. It's Ringo by Ringo Starr. Yes, this is a fun album and Ringo's best release. I don't think there's much debate about that. There is some people who will lay claim for Goodnight Vienna, but Ringo, this is the closest to a Beatle reunion. They're all on here. They all contribute on here. They all play, sing. It's a joyous album. I'm the Greatest from John Lennon's pen. We have 6 O'Clock from McCartney's. We have the contributions of George. Ringo is a really good album and the best thing that Ringo Starr did after leaving the Beatles. And number 5, an album that I think is unquestionably the best by this artist. It's Hello by Status Quo. So they'd had a hit on their hands with Piledriver. Hello takes the formula of Piledriver and maxes it to their most, for me, commercial and artistic album when you combine it together. Opening up with Roll Over Lay Down and closing with 4,500 Times, there is not a bad track on Hello, and it may lay claim to being 8 perfect tracks. Caroline, huge hit, Softer Ride, Blue Eyed Lady, and It's Better Now. And this is such a good album. Hello by Status Quo, best thing that, in my opinion, they ever did. It's my number 5. Number 4 is the second entry from this artist, and it's a double album. I have done a reimagined about this being condensed to a single, but my word, some of the material on here is so good. Goodbye Yellow Brick Road. Funeral for a Friend, Love Lies Bleeding alone would get it on this list. But when we have Candle in the Wind and Grey Seal, and I've seen that movie too, and The Ballad of Danny Bailey and Harmony and the title track, we have a great record. I do genuinely think there is a phenomenal unimpeachable single album in there if you drop rubbish, in my opinion, like Benny and the Jets, or All the Young Girls Love Alice, and maybe Dirty Little Girl, a few of the kind of misogynistic lyrics. But the stuff I previously mentioned is warranting its high placing on this list at number 4. Goodbye Yellow Brick Road by Elton John. And number 3 is the first album on this list that was in my top 15 of the entire 70s. There Goes Rhyming Simon, my favourite Paul Simon record. So we have Kodachrome, banned in the UK for being a trademark. Something So Right, and One Man's Ceiling is Another Man's Floor. Was a Sunny Day, St. Judy's Comet, the single in America, Loves Me Like a Rock. And then, in the middle of the record, American Tune. One of my top 10 songs of all time. And based on the Bach melody of Oh Sacred Head Now Wounded, but a beautifully, achingly wonderful song, American Tune. There Goes Rhyming Simon, my number 3. Number 2, I've placed an album that I've seen a lot of people place as possibly the best album of all time. Certainly in their list of the 70s, but something just nudges it out. Dark Side of the Moon by Pink Floyd. What an album. Just an amazing listening experience from the needle first entering the record to the fade out of Eclipse at the end. Time, Money, Breathe, Brain Damage, Us and Them, and of course, The Great Gig in the Sky. Dark Side of the Moon is my number 2. Which leaves only one possibility for my number 1 album of 1973 for anybody who's watched any of my videos before. Band on the Run. Paul McCartney, released December 1973. The best Paul McCartney album. So much on here that is absolutely phenomenal that I do like, if not love, every single track. Even those that in my McCartney values I rag on a little bit for just over familiarity. Let me run through the track listing. Band on the Run. A1, brilliant single and opener. Jet, cracking rocker. Bluebird, absolutely beautiful second bird song from McCartney. Mrs. Vanderbilt, good. Crazy bass line. Let Me Roll It, which I am just bored of, but it's still a great song. And then over on to side 2, Mamunia, which I think is beautiful. The only song he's never played live from this record. No Words for My Love. I absolutely adore Denny's contribution into this album, and that track is just great. Picasso's Last Words, the song he was challenged to write. And then the best track on the album, 1985, which then codas with a tiny bit of Band on the Run. It's an absolutely brilliant album. Band on the Run is my best album of 1973, the best album turning 50 this year. So that concludes my ranking of my top 15 albums turning 50 this year from 1973. Let me know in the comments what you think. Head on over to the Facebook page if you don't fancy commenting here, and comment on the Facebook page. I do respond and read your comments, and I value all of them. I love every single thumbs up that you give me on the video. That leads to greater success in the YouTube algorithms. Please remember to hit the subscribe button if you've not already done so, and the bell for notifications of future content. I am back in a week with my next video, but until then, thanks for watching.